Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel, it's Cynicalex. And in response to the Marvel Future Fight post from last night, a lot of people have been tagging me and sending me over to this tweet by KOO, which came out about half an hour after the Marvel Future Fight post, basically suggesting and encouraging players to leave their suggestions for Marvel Future Fight, in addition to on the survey, of course, on his tweet. So he says, list your suggestions here. If you don't have any suggestions, share the tweet, like it or retweet it or whatever. If you have something, be constructive. So it's pretty interesting to see KOO, part of Marvel Games, of course, not directly related to Netmarble. He works for Marvel, but it's interesting to see him. He's a director for Marvel Games, and he's in production for multiple Marvel games, including Marvel Future Fight, Marvel Future Revolution, Super War, etc. He's the creator of Crescent, Luna Snow, IO. So, you know, he's got a long and very rich history with Marvel Future Fight. It's interesting to see him tweet this out, and it's also interesting to go and read the replies and see him interacting with fans. Now, I'm personally surprised and interested and sort of delighted to see him doing this. I would also want, to be honest, I would want someone that works for Marvel Future Fight, for Netmarble Monster, to actually be doing this, like perhaps maybe executive producer Joe Lee or someone else. But this is obviously way better than nothing. So I do encourage you to go and tweet him your constructive, polite ideas for Marvel Future Fight. And that's what I thought I would do today, in as fast and as clean cut a way as possible. So, you know, there's lots of suggestions you can give for Marvel Future Fight. Obviously, we can take the cynical point of view and just rag on them for releasing 2 surveys in the span of 5 months and not even allowing us to see the results of the first survey, which would be 1 month from now, because 6 months in between update is what the timeline that we were given, right? Every batch of updates gets planned 6 months in advance. So if they got the January or February survey results, it would take them until July or August to implement them. But I'm not going to be that cynical. I was that cynical in a previous video. So what I want to do instead now is I want to answer KOO honestly. So hopefully, if KOO is watching, I am going to be sort of deconstructing one of the worst game modes in Marvel Future Fight, which is Timeline Battle, and I'm going to be asking for your help as well. So stay tuned for that. So Timeline Battle, I've talked about it a lot. I've given my suggestions a lot for how to fix it, but hopefully if KOO is watching and listening, and people at Marvel Future Fight are watching and listening, they can maybe take something away from this, or that they missed in previous videos, or that they just didn't see at all, and we can make this game mode better, because Timeline Battle, I feel like, is one of the most unique game modes in Marvel Future Fight, because you're fighting against other players. Now, it's not live PvP, but you still are fighting against their teams. So unlike other content like Giant Boss Raid, where you're going in and you're always fighting against the same boss. It's Master Mold or it's Galactus. Or you're going in here and you're choosing which boss you fight, right? These are always static bosses. I'm always going to fight 2 waves and then Surtur. But with Timeline Battle, there's that added variability. Right, it's not only the added variability of what team your opponent decides to use, what characters, right? There's 223 plus characters in Marvel Future Fight. So which 3 characters with which 3 uniforms, right, did your opponent choose to use? And then what are their builds? What are your opponent's cards? And so on and so forth. So there's so many layers of depth to Timeline Battle, and it could be such an interesting game mode if it was more creative, if it was more challenging, and if it was more rewarding to players. So I'm going to list out all of the things that I think need to change, and then I want to get your feedback about Timeline Battle. So yeah, there's lots of things obviously that you could change about Timeline Battle. There's lots of small things, there's lots of large things. So I'm basically going to put them into 6 categories of changes, and I'm not going to list them in order of their importance, but I'm just going to list them in the order that I thought about them. So the first area that can be improvements can be anything from adding additional versions of this, or adding this as a brand new thing, or improving what's already there. The first one is the environment. The environment are the places in which you fight, right? Marvel Future Fight takes place in the future, and you go to all these different planets and you look at all these different locations. And if you take a look over here, you can see we're in the Klin. Then we go, okay, yeah, thank you, I don't want to buy anything. We're in the Klin, and then you have here, what else? We have Black Bolt's throne on Atalan. You have Stark Tower. You have AIM headquarters. Look at all this variety, right? This is really taking the Marvel IP and really exploring it and opening it up for us to have fun in Alaska, Times Square, Wakanda. But what happens in Marvel Future Fight? Well, up until very recently, we had 1 zone only. Well, we had basically 2 zones. And the zones are just these really boring aim bases with zero personality. Now, more recently, they added this zone, which is a street level view. Not only is this a brand new zone, but it's got brand new camera angles. And I think this adds a lot of life to this game mode because the camera angle shifts, it goes up and down, and it provides this really nice sort of bystander POV, right? So you have this bystander POV, and you feel like, in a way, you're watching your characters battle against the enemy. So it's really, really interesting, and it goes from like a bird's eye view down to something more street level, and I think this really works. I think this is beautiful, but this is just one of the available arenas, and this was only added in the last few months. The other arena, as you'll see if I queue up again and I don't get the street view again, the other arena is terribly boring. It's terribly uninspired. It's terribly unoriginal. And it's... Okay, we got the street one again. Hang on. Here we go. So you can see this arena here. It's just a circle. And there's just nothing discernible, nothing interesting, nothing unique. If I took away the Marvel characters, would you even be able to tell that this arena was Marvel themed? No, you wouldn't, because there's no discernible Marvel flavor. There's no Marvel uniqueness here. If you even look closely at the background, it was just copied and duplicated and reflected. They're literally just mirrored reflections of each other. So this took like the minimum amount of effort, and this just has the minimum amount of personality, and this is really, in my opinion, anti-Marvel, right? This is just generic RPG game that any game maker could make and that any player could find themselves being a part of. And so this arena, unfortunately, was the arena that we've actually had to deal with for the past 3-4 years. So until they added that street one, we actually didn't have any. So they definitely need to improve the environments and the camera angles. But more so than that, I think they need to improve the rewards. And the rewards are the thing that I often harp on the most, because unlike what Danny KOO said in one of his follow-up tweets, because he did reply to a lot of the players here, he said, outside of rewards, tell me, he says, how do you define team reworks and what the timeline battle feature is that you think needs improvements? Outside of rewards, that's subjective. I strongly disagree with this idea that rewards are subjective, Danny, because I know that he knows. He loves video games, probably maybe more than I do. He's certainly been playing video games longer than I have. You know, rewards, it's important to be rewarded for what you do, right? If you defeat some meaningless mini-boss in Final Fantasy and you get, you know, some crazy sword upgrade or some crazy strong materia, it's going to feel really disjointed. It's like, wow, I spent 10 seconds beating this boss and they gave me 5 levels of XP? What's going on? And then you beat Sephiroth in the final battle and they give you 1 XP. Or they give you some you know, some wind materia that you have 1,000 of. And you're like, what? All this effort, and I got barely more than I got for some other boss. So as the difficulty increases, as the challenge increases, the rewards have to increase. That's just a foundational component of video games, right? Video games is an interactive media where the person creating the game is creating some sort of puzzle, some sort of mountain that they're encouraging the players that interact with the game to climb or to solve. But there has to be a worthwhile thing inside the puzzle or at the top of the mountain. There has to be something worthwhile up there. Maybe it's the view at the top of the mountain that you get to see. Maybe it's the trophy that waits for you, or there's some sort of badge that you'll get to display to everyone else when you climb the mountain, or you get a special flag, or you get some sort of special power. There has to be something. These are just, you know, fundamental aspects, components of a game. It's like reading a story that has a really pathetic, you know, boring, predictable ending. You're gonna feel like you wasted your time reading those 200-300 pages, just like players feel like they waste their time, because they go from bronze, right? And they go from getting 50 or 70 crystals, and they work up to vibranium, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 leagues. So they literally go through 5 leagues over the course of 5 weeks minimum, because it takes a week to be promoted. So over a month of work, of hard work. And what do they get? They get barely double, barely triple the rewards for over a month's worth of effort, right? So you're fighting 70 times per week for over a month. You're fighting over 300 battles. And the rewards are, instead of 70 crystals, it's 200 crystals. Wow, that's a big difference. No, it's not. It's a terribly small difference. It's pretty meaningless. Not only are the rewards meaningless, in regards to the challenge, but honestly, the leagues are meaningless. The leagues are meaningless because look how lazy and uninspired this is. Promoted above 20%, demoted under 20%. I don't care. There's no one cares about this. No one cares what league you're in. It's completely meaningless. Not only is it meaningless, but when you look at the teams used, you see how really meaningless it is and how little effort has been put in here by the devs. So you take a look here. Silver Surfer, Colossus. Silver Surfer, Colossus. Silver Surfer, Colossus. Silver Surfer, Colossus. Let's go down to Platinum. Silver Surfer, Colossus. Silver Surfer, Thanos. Okay, Doctor Strange. We got another Thanos there. We got another Thanos, Colossus. We got a Silver Surfer, Colossus. Let's go down to Gold. What do we see here? Okay, Jean Grey, Colossus. Jean Grey, Colossus. Okay, Darkhawk, Jean Grey. Okay, Thanos, Jean Grey, Colossus. Thanos, Jean Grey, Colossus. Let's go down to Silver. What do we got here? Oh, Silver Surfer. Okay, nice. Silver Surfer, Thanos, Jean Grey. Silver Surfer, Thanos, Jean Grey. Silver Surfer, Thanos, Colossus. Let's go down to Bronze. The very first league. Let's scroll down. I don't want to see the #1 player. That's not fair. Let's go see the number 60 player. Jean Grey, tier 3. Thanos, Colossus, Jean Grey. Jean Grey, Colossus, Thanos, Silver Surfer. See what I'm saying? So the leagues are absolutely meaningless. They're meaningless in terms of the division of players. They're meaningless in terms of the restrictions. They're meaningless in terms of the rewards. It's just completely meaningless. So all of this needs to change. The rewards needs to change. The variety of league needs to change. The variety of the rules need to change, because the variety of rules is just this. This is all it boils down to. This is the only difference in variety that you will see between leagues, and it's often meaningless, and often leagues will have the same restricted characters for 1 week out of the month, which is 0 restricted characters. That's right. One of the 4 different weeks of restricted characters is actually no restriction. Wow, how creative is that, right? Crazy. So all of these things need to change, and so basically what I'm proposing here is to help you guys, to help me. I want you guys to voice your opinions about Timeline Battle. So if you wouldn't mind, I've left a link down below in the description to the MFF Timeline Battle 2020 Google form, and I'm taking a page out of Netmarble Monster's book, and I'm giving you a survey. Ha ha ha. So let's just go ahead and read through these questions and just basically talk about it briefly. So first of all, I have to establish if you're taking this thing, and honestly, or obviously, please answer honestly and independently. Do you think Timeline Battle in MFF needs improvement? TBL is going to be Timeline Battle. So if you don't think Timeline Battle needs improvement, then just say no, and that's it. You're done. It's fine. All the questions are required to answer, but you know, not everyone thinks that I'm right. Not everyone thinks that Timeline Battle needs to be improved. That's totally fine. Do you have fun in Timeline Battle now? Okay. What part of Timeline Battle needs improvement the most? So these are the areas in which I tried to discuss briefly in the video. So rewards, environment, variety of characters played with and against, so we don't see the same 3 or 4 teams over and over again. Variety of rules. This includes character restrictions and weekly buffs, which I'll get into in a second. Variety of leagues, which is what we talked about from Bronze to Vibranium. And then the number of entries. Some people want the number of entries to be unlimited for everyone. Some people want the entries to be fixed for everyone, the same number of entries. Some players feel that we should be able to pay with money to get more refreshes. Okay. And I basically wanted you guys to list them from most important to least important. So you're gonna choose one that you think is the most important improvement, and then the second most improvement, the second most important, third most important, and then the fourth most important improvement, to give the devs an idea of where they need to focus their attention. Because I'm not too optimistic that they'll be able to fix everything that's wrong with Timeline Battle. I hope so, but probably not. And so this way, at least they can fix 2 or 3 of the things, and we can have a much more enjoyable game mode. And then I just asked you some additional follow-up questions that relate to each of these individual ideas. So, are you satisfied with the number and variety of Timeline Battle environments? We currently have 3 different arenas and 2 camera angles, which I showcased in the video. Are you motivated to win in Timeline Battle for rewards? Just for an example, the top 1% of all players, which would be Vibranium, get 220 crystals. And if you are just in the top 80% of Vibranium players, which is not that impressive, you get 120 crystals. So there's only a 100 crystal difference between winning, you know, all of your fights and losing the majority of your fights, which is wild to me. But anywho, and then I asked you to describe the composition of teams that you see in Timeline Battle. So do you think there's lots of variety used by characters? So do you see 25 different unique characters in the 10 battles that you do per day? Do you see less variety? Do you see less variety? Or do you see no variety? Mostly identical characters. It's still like really blows me away that a game that has over 220 characters thinks that it's a good idea to put players in a position where they literally just have to put in the same teams and win every single day, right? Every other Marvel game encourages variety, forces you to use different teams, use different characters, right? Marvel, if Marvel Comics could, they would force you to read different comics because they don't want you to just read Thanos, Jean Grey, and Colossus comics. They don't just want you to read one type of comic, right? It's a gigantic universe. That's why they're not just making Iron Man movies or just making Spider-Man movies. They're making movies about all these characters, Ant-Man, characters you've never even heard of, because it's a rich, crazy, huge universe with literally hundreds of characters. So why don't we see those hundreds of characters reflected in Timeline Battle? I don't know. I think we really should. So there's that. Do you think the restricted recommended list makes Timeline Battle enjoyable? Would you want unique weekly buffs that apply globally to all teams? So this is one interesting thing that I see in pretty much every other mobile game that I play, 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross, you know, whatever, King of Fighters All-Star, etc. So basically what these means are these would be global weekly buffs that would apply perhaps just to a league or to all leagues, and they would basically make Timeline Battle, they would encourage you to use different teams in Timeline Battle. So for example, you have certain bosses, let's say in Final Fantasy, where ranged attacks don't do any damage, right? Like when you play against one of the bosses, his name's not Rush, Rude. One of the cleaners or whatever, his name's Rude. You can't use ranged attacks on him, I believe, because just the way that the character functions, he just like shrugs them off, and then he rushes in close and starts grappling you and using all these melee in sort of wrestling type attacks. So you can sort of have that essence, you can have that idea, and you can reflect it in Marvel Future Fight in a way that's fun. So for example, you could have a week where everyone has 50%. Every character has plus 50% guaranteed dodge. So what does that mean? Well, that means a couple of things. You can either bring characters that already have a lot of dodge, like Ant-Man, Quicksilver, Spider-Man, and you can stack that benefit, or you can bring in a bunch of characters that are really good at hitting their target because they have a lot of ignore dodge, like Black Bolt and Apocalypse, and all these characters that are really precise, like Hawkeye, Bullseye, etc. You could have a week where there's no reviving, so characters that have a disproportionate advantage because they have a second life, like the Warriors of the Sky with Sunbird, Jean Grey, Silver Surfer, Doctor Doom, etc., they no longer have that advantage just for Timeline Battle and just for that week. Not in all game modes, just for Timeline Battle. You could have a week where leaderships don't work, so the leadership ability is locked and you have to just rely on your characters as they're built without having any leadership buffs. It makes other characters more valuable, it makes other strategies more valuable. You could have a week where custom gear is not applied. This, in my opinion, should be an entire league unto itself in order to balance things between free-to-play players and spending players, because it's unfair that brand new and free-to-play players have to queue up against teams where they've got CTP of regen, CTP of regen, CTP of regen, CTP of insight, and their entire team is stacked with all these CTPs, and you've got a bunch of regular custom gears. So if we just ignore all of the custom gears, it evens the playing field a lot more for these players in between free-to-play or low-spending players and then the crazy expensive whales. And then the whales can still have an advantage with Uru or Odin's blessings or their cards or what have you, but they just don't have an overwhelming advantage in every single category. And of course, this can be tweaked and changed and doesn't have to be these ideas specifically, but I think this is a wonderful way of bringing variety along with encouraging players to use different characters. Do you think the leagues between Bronze and Vibranium accurately represent players in difficulty? I think I covered why it's 100% false, but okay, give me your opinion there. And then should players be allowed to pay for more Timeline Battle entries? So yeah, I just want to get your opinions on this, and then hopefully we can send this off or we can post this somewhere publicly, and the Marvel Future Fight devs, Danny KOO, can take a look at this and add it to their list of things that hopefully, maybe, cross your fingers, will help shift and push the game in the right direction. This is my attempt at being as optimistic and as hopeful as possible and not being cynical at all. So let me know what you think, and hopefully you will fill out the Google form as well. Thank you so much for watching. Hit me up in the comments down below with your thoughts, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.